As the first light of dawn pierced through the heavy clouds over eastern Ukraine, the silence of the shattered landscape was broken by the thunder of artillery and the sharp bursts of automatic fire. The cold air trembled under the weight of explosions, and the smell of smoke and burning metal filled the morning breeze. Ukrainian armored vehicles rolled forward, their engines roaring as they advanced across the scarred, cratered earth, each track grinding through layers of mud, ash, and frozen soil. In the distance, the ghostly silhouettes of burned-out trees stood like blackened sentinels, silent witnesses to years of relentless warfare. This was no ordinary morning. It marked the rebirth of defiance, the moment when Ukraine's most battle-hardened soldiers, the Azov Regiment, launched their long-awaited counteroffensive. Their mission was simple but monumental: reclaim lost ground, shatter the Russian front, and remind the world that Ukraine's resolve could never be extinguished. In the pre-dawn darkness, squads of Azov soldiers moved like shadows through the mist. Their breaths condensed in the freezing air as they advanced, hearts pounding beneath their armored vests. Each step was deliberate. Every sound mattered. Weeks of reconnaissance and sleepless planning had led to this moment. They had memorized Russian trench lines, studied enemy supply routes, and marked the exact coordinates where artillery would strike. The men spoke little, their faces set with grim determination. Then came the first whispered command over the radio: "Advance." Within seconds, the stillness was shattered. Mortar shells screamed across the sky, machine guns roared, and the horizon erupted into a storm of fire and light. The long, silent standoff on the Russian front had ended in an instant. What followed was chaos, beautiful and terrifying, the sound of a nation's vengeance unleashed. The Azov fighters surged forward with mechanical precision, moving in tightly coordinated formations, honed by months of brutal combat. The crackle of rifles and the deep thump of artillery blended into an unending symphony of destruction. Infantry teams secured the flanks while drone operators hovered their machines high above the battlefield, relaying live video and adjusting the trajectory of every strike. Russian positions that had stood for weeks began to collapse under the relentless bombardment. Enemy soldiers scrambled to respond, but they were met with an unstoppable force. Fast, calculated, and merciless. Smoke and dust filled the air, turning the morning light into a gray haze through which only muzzle flashes could be seen. Visibility dropped to mere meters, and yet the Azov men advanced without hesitation. Every meter of ground gained came at the cost of blood, but their will to fight was unbreakable. By mid-morning, what had begun as a coordinated assault had transformed into a full-scale battle stretching across several kilometers of the Eastern Front. The once stable Russian lines now burned with chaos. Communication between their units broke down as Ukrainian forces pushed deeper, isolating outposts and severing resupply routes. Drone footage captured scenes of intense close-quarter fighting, trenches filled with smoke, shattered bunkers, and bodies scattered across the frost-covered ground. The Azov Regiment fought with ferocity born from purpose. For them, this was not merely about territory or military gain, it was about reclaiming dignity, avenging fallen comrades, and proving that Ukraine's heart still beat strong despite the endless war. The battlefield became a storm of steel and fire. Artillery shells exploded in rapid succession, shaking the earth as waves of black smoke rolled across the horizon. Amid the chaos, soldiers shouted orders, medics carried the wounded to safety, and the constant hum of drones filled the sky. Yet despite the danger, morale surged among the Azov ranks. They could see victory taking shape before them. Enemy bunkers collapsing, trenches abandoned, and defensive lines splintering. For the first time in weeks, the Ukrainian flag rose again over reclaimed territory, fluttering defiantly in the biting wind. It was a moment that spoke louder than any broadcast or speech. Ukraine was still fighting, still alive, still unbroken. As the sun climbed higher, the battlefield shifted once more. Russian reinforcements poured in from neighboring sectors, determined to retake what they had lost. The counterattack intensified into a storm of retaliation, missiles, mortars, and tank shells raining down on Azov's forward positions. The ground shook, yet the Ukrainian fighters held firm. Veterans with years of experience under fire guided the younger soldiers through the barrage, their calm voices cutting through the chaos. "Hold your line!" one commander shouted, his words steady and clear even as shells exploded around him. "We came to take this ground, and we're not leaving it behind." As the hours dragged into the afternoon, the battle only grew fiercer. What had begun as a calculated counteroffensive now raged into an all-consuming storm of fire and steel. The frozen fields of eastern Ukraine, once quiet under winter's weight, were churned into thick mud mixed with ash, blood, and fragments of shattered armor. Every explosion carved new scars into the earth, and every echo of artillery rolled like thunder across the horizon. Yet through this chaos, the Azov Regiment pressed forward. Their movements were sharp, deliberate, a force tempered by months of relentless warfare. They adapted swiftly to Russian counterattacks, turning every obstacle into an opportunity, every defensive line into a weakness to exploit. Behind them, Ukrainian artillery units unleashed a barrage so constant that the ground itself seemed to tremble, creating a wall of fire that shielded the advancing infantry and cut off any hope of Russian reinforcement. The bravery displayed on both sides was undeniable, but it was the spirit of the Azov fighters that broke the stalemate. Where others might have faltered, they surged ahead, driven not by orders, but by conviction. Their unity and discipline transformed chaos into coordination. Their courage turned desperation into defiance. The counterattack that had begun in the gray light of dawn had now become a symbol of unyielding resolve, a living testament to the belief that freedom, once threatened, must be fought for at all costs. As dusk approached, the landscape burned under the orange glow of distant fires. The sky was heavy with smoke, swirling in violent waves as artillery flashes painted fleeting silhouettes across the horizon. The rhythmic pounding of explosions merged with the crackle of flames, creating a grim symphony of war. Still, the Azov fighters moved with purpose. Exhausted yet unwavering, they secured newly captured positions and began constructing makeshift fortifications. Their hands were blistered, their uniforms torn, but their eyes burned with the same fierce determination that had carried them through the day. Behind the lines, medics worked tirelessly under flickering lanterns, bandaging wounds, administering morphine, whispering words of comfort to the fallen who refused to be evacuated. Every soldier knew the cost of the day's victory, but none regretted it. They had reclaimed more than territory. They had reclaimed hope.
Блядь,
As the sun finally sank below the horizon, the battlefield was swallowed by darkness. Only the distant fires remained, burning stubbornly against the night. Amid the devastation, the Azov Regiment gathered, bloodied, weary, but proud. They stood shoulder to shoulder, their faces lit by the glow of embers and the faint glimmer of stars breaking through the smoke. Around them lay the remnants of the day's struggle: twisted steel, broken helmets, the haunting silence of the fallen. Yet within that silence, there was triumph. The Russian front, long deemed impenetrable, had been breached. It was not a sweeping victory, but it was a beginning, a spark in the darkness that would ignite hearts across the nation. News of the counterattack spread swiftly through Ukraine. From the trenches near Kharkiv to the villages of Zaporizhia, from command bunkers to family homes, the story of Azov's dawn assault became a rallying cry. It was a message that cut through despair like a blade through fog. Ukraine still fights. Ukraine still endures. The nation, battered but unbroken, found strength in the courage of these men who had stared death in the face and refused to yield. For the first time in months, the people saw not just war, but the possibility of victory. As the smoke settled over the shattered fields and the cries of the wounded faded into the night, a profound stillness took hold. The Azov Regiment had given everything they had. Their counterattack had not only shifted the front lines, it had reignited a nation's faith in itself. This was no longer just a tactical operation. It had become a legend in the making, a story of defiance that would echo through the generations. Each explosion, each order shouted through the haze, each soldier who refused to retreat, it all became part of a greater narrative, one that told the world that Ukraine's fight was not just for land, but for identity, for sovereignty, for the very right to exist. And when the final shots of the day faded into silence, one truth stood unshaken: Ukraine fights on. The war had taken much: cities, lives, dreams, but it had not taken their will to resist. The Azov Regiment's counterattack at dawn would forever stand as a chapter written in fire, courage, and sacrifice, a moment when darkness met its match in the light of determination. This is Delta History, where every dawn brings a new chapter of courage, every story honors the fallen, and every word reminds us that freedom is never given, it is earned.